The arena hung in orbit like a gargantuan jewel set against the swirling ochre clouds of Arceth 7, its outer panels glittering with the banners of 47 species and their insufferably smug governments. Inside, the air hummed with 100 incompatible atmospheres, each tailored to its audience. Sulfuric mist for the SYDH-Lu, crackling ion storms for the Kefri, and good old-fashioned oxygen for the handful of humans unfortunate enough to be present. The scent was unbearable, a mingling of ozone, fermented algae, and something that smelled faintly like burning rubber, but only to creatures with mammalian olfactory glands. To the galaxy at large, this was a cultural event. To the Galactic Empire, it was a show of power wrapped in ritual. To Mira Stoyanovna, standing barefoot on the cold black metal of the execution stage, it was Tuesday. She blinked against the glaring lights, her wrists bound in a luminous green coil that burned when she shifted. The crowd roared in a symphony of clicks, howls, and chimes as her image appeared on colossus screens overhead. Subject number 8727. Human female. Crimes. Terrorism, data theft, unauthorized breathing in restricted zones. Look at her, hissed the Serpentine ambassador in the luxury box. So fragile, you can practically hear her bones creak. Mira rubbed her nose with the back of her hand. Actually, that's your translator lagging. Happens a lot when you speak in that gurgly nonsense. The ambassador recoiled, his forked tongue flaring. The guards shoved her forward. The announcer's voice boomed, translated simultaneously into 100 tongues. Citizens of the Empire, welcome to this cycle's grand arena justice. Behold, the accused, a soft-fleshed, warm-blooded anomaly from Sector 3, convicted of heinous crimes against peace and order. The crowd shrieked approval. Some threw capsules that exploded into showers of green sparks. Mira tilted her head, calculating the height of the dome, the number of drones hovering, the way the floor panels hummed slightly offbeat as if syncing to an external power source. She was calm, too calm, given she was a moment away from being splattered into a smear of pink under the claws of whatever oversized brute they had assigned her. But that was the trick. Stay still. Let them underestimate you. Always let them believe the fight's already won. Across the arena, a vast door groaned open. The smell hit first, fetid, sweet, a cross between rotting meat and molten copper. Then came the sound, a thud of footfalls heavy enough to make the ground vibrate. The crowd erupted. The announcer's voice practically oozed reverence. And now, our execution champion, the undefeated, unstoppable, skull-crushing titan of Raxon 6, the Tharkil Bonebreaker. It lumbered into view, a mountain of muscle and scale, plated in bone armor etched with kill marks. Venom dripped from its mandibles, sizzling as it hit the floor. For arms flexed, two ending in claws the size of machetes, the others in bludgeoning fists. "Do we even need this farce?" murmured a spindly insectoid watching from the council box. "It's over already." Mira smiled faintly. "Good. Keep thinking that." The Tharkil snarled, pounding its chest. The sound shook the rafters. It leaned down, its fetid breath washing over her. "This will not take long, little mammal." "Neither did your last mating season, from what I've heard," Mira said sweetly. There was a split second of stunned silence. Somewhere in the stands, a gelatinous being let out a high-pitched squeal. The Tharkil's claws flexed with murderous intent. "Begin to write," barked the announcer. Columns of flame shot around them, and the gravity shifted wildly, an old trick to destabilize bipeds. Myra's knees buckled for the briefest instant. She recovered, shifting her weight onto the balls of her feet. The neural implant at the base of her skull tingled faintly, adjusting her inner ear balance, just as her mother had taught her. "Stay alive for 6 seconds. That's all it takes." Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. 6 seconds is forever in combat. Forever, Mira. The Tharkil lunged. She sidestepped neatly, feeling the air shear as a claw sliced past her ribs. The floor bucked violently. She rolled with it, coming up in a low crouch. The crowd gasped, not in admiration, but in confusion. How was she still breathing? The announcer hesitated, his voice faltering for a fraction of a second before roaring again. The human delays the inevitable. Witness her final moments. Myra's lips curved into the barest whisper of a smile. Not yet. And somewhere deep in the Imperial network, a dormant virus stirred. The air reeked of burnt ozone and hubris. Mira kept her breathing slow, shallow, letting the acrid stench of alien adrenaline wash over her without breaking the stillness in her spine. The Darkill's claws raked across the arena floor, throwing up sparks as it prowled in a slow circle. Its mandibles clicked in a war rhythm, a sound meant to terrify prey before the final blow. Most creatures would be trembling, begging, or doing something very dramatic and teary-eyed for cameras. Mira simply wiped a smear of dust off her cheek with her bound hands and met its gaze without blinking. Fragile little thing, the Darkill growled, its voice a grinding of rock and venom sacs. Did they tell you the odds? Or would that have made you faint? Odds don't matter to corpses, Mira said, her tone so dry it could have ignited from a spark. The crowd roared with laughter, not at her wit but at the arrogance of a human presuming to speak at all. Somewhere in the stands, a gelatinous being wobbled into light and expelled a stream of bioluminescent goo. Inside Myra's head, a voice whispered, not imagined, but memory sharp as a razor. There are two ways to be invisible, Mila. Be so small they forget you exist, or be so terrifying they pray you're not real. Her mother's voice, always calm, always unyielding. Baba Yaga, the name spoken like a curse in the darker corners of 1,000 worlds. Assassin, tactician mother, though Mira doubted anyone but her knew about that last part. Her earliest memories weren't of lullabies or nursery walls painted in pastel tones. They were cold steel tables, her tiny fingers fumbling with disassembled plasma pistols under her mother's unblinking gaze. Of learning to cook borscht while simultaneously disarming booby traps hidden in the kitchen floor tiles. Of bedtime stories where the monsters weren't on the bed. They were enemies her mother had already neutralized before tucking her in. Calm heart, sharp mind, faster hands. The words whispered into her hair each night. Calm heart, Mira murmured now under her breath, unseen by the cameras. Her pulse slowed a fraction. The Darkill crouched low. Its claws scraped the ground, muscles tensing in a coil of pure killing intent. You mammals bleed so beautifully. It hissed, venom dripping and sizzling on the arena floor. You're talking an awful lot for someone planning to finish me in one strike, Mira replied. The alien's upper lip curled. The audience laughed again, except for one observer seated in the highest Imperial box. A Zereth admiral with pale crystalline skin narrowed his multifaceted eyes. His translator clicked in disapproval. Why is she still standing? Because the Darkill is toying with her, a bureaucrat answered smoothly, though there was an almost imperceptible quiver to his mandibles. It wanted to put on a show. But that wasn't it. Not really. Mira knew how this went. She'd seen it in her mother's training sims, the overconfident apex predator circling, savoring the kill, never imagining the gazelle has claws. Myra's neural implant tingled faintly again, a sign that the passive combat algorithms her mother had uploaded were still quietly mapping the arena's dynamics. Subtle vibrations under her bare feet revealed a fluctuating power flow in the floor panels. She filed that away. The announcer's voice crackled over the comms, trying to keep the crowd's energy from dipping into confusion. The human delays her death. Observe her mammalian panic responses. Mira took a slow breath. Panic later, she whispered. She shifted her weight imperceptibly as the Darkill lunged forward, jaws wide, claws flashing. The temperature around her spiked, an atmospheric hazard built into the arena to favor species with high heat tolerance. Sweat beaded on her brow, and then time seemed to slow, not in any mystical sense, but because Mira had been taught to think in milliseconds. Muscle groups engaged, trajectory obvious, weakness in the right knee, favoring the left side for attack. Exploit the pattern. Her mother's voice again. People think survival is instinct. It isn't. Survival is mathematics executed at speed. Mira twisted sideways as the Darkill's claw descended. It missed her head by a centimeter, slamming into the floor and cracking the panel. The arena let out a collective gasp. The bureaucrat with the twitchy mandibles finally exhaled. The Darkill rose with a snarl. Clever little primate, it hissed. It will hurt more now. Good. Mira thought. Hurt is slower than dead. In the luxury box, the Zereth Admiral leaned forward. Pause the betting pool, he ordered softly. Something isn't right. But it was too late for them to notice. It had already begun. The arena's floor shimmered like black ice, alive with faint pulses of emerald light that rippled outward in a perfect grid. Gravity surged, then sagged, then snapped back so violently Mira felt her bones creak. It was deliberate, of course, designed by a committee of Imperial engineers to subtly sabotage bipedal creatures with fragile inner ears and no extra limbs to stabilize themselves. The Tharkill, all coiled muscle and sprawling legs, stalked effortlessly across the shifting surface, claws leaving faint gouges in the metal. It was grinning, or at least Mira thought it was grinning. The species' bone-plated faces weren't great at subtlety. The crowd was restless. Murmurs of irritation rolled through the tiers like distant thunder. Their champion wasn't making quick work of a human girl. She wasn't supposed to dodge that last strike. She wasn't supposed to still be breathing. Mira crouched low, forcing her lungs to work in the sound of heat radiating from the arena walls. Sweat rolled down her spine. Her wrists still bound, the faint electric hum of restraints buzzing against her skin. She could feel her pulse slowing, not spiking, in a way that would have alarmed any medic monitoring her vitals. They'll try to distract you first. Spectacle is a weapon, too. Her mother had said years ago. Baba Yaga's voice carried in memory with all the warmth of a winter storm. Ignore the noise. Count. Numbers never lie. One breath in. One out. The Tharkill lunged again, claws outstretched. Mira ducked and rolled sideways, narrowly avoiding a blow that cracked the floor panel where she'd been standing. Sparks leapt upward. Somewhere in the stands, a gelatinous alien let out a shriek of disappointment and threw a glowing pod that burst midair, releasing clouds of fluorescent spores. Myra's mind stayed steady. The implant at the base of her skull hummed faintly as it mapped the champion's movements, angles, velocity, micro-delays in its right leg. You fight well for meat, the Tharkill growled, its breath stinking of iron and rotting vegetation. It towered above her, a wall of chitin and rage. I'd thank you for compliment, Mira replied evenly, but I'm pretty sure your translator's lying. She pivoted on her heel as another claw swept toward her, moving too fast for a normal human to avoid. The edge of the talon caught her shoulder, just a graze, but heat flared and blood blossomed across her thin tunic. The crowd screamed approval at the sight of red. The announcer's voice bellowed overhead, syrupy with delight. At last the human bleeds. The Bonebreaker's victory is imminent. Mira stumbled back a step, using the motion to shift her weight toward the arena's edge. She brushed her fingers against the restraints and felt the heat of their power cell. Good. The charge was still stable. The Tharkill advanced. One strike, warm blood. I'll split you in two. Let it think that, Mira told herself. Always let them think that. In the luxury box high above, the Zereth Admiral leaned closer to the edge of his seat. His crystalline face reflected the arena's shifting lights like a shattered mirror. Why hasn't she fallen? He murmured to no one in particular. The bureaucrat beside him fidgeted with his data slate. It's irrelevant, a statistical anomaly. The Tharkill will end her in seconds. Myra's ears caught a faint click from the floor. The gravity was about to spike again. Her neural implant pulsed, calculating trajectories and timing to the millisecond. The Bonebreaker roared, leaping high, for limbs outstretched, every claw ready to rip her apart. Mira moved. It wasn't dramatic, no flashy flips, no cinematic acrobatics. It was precise, economical. A half step left, a shallow crouch to let the claws swipe harmlessly overhead, a quick pivot as her shoulder brushed against the Tharkill's scaled thigh. And in that moment, just as the gravity surged, she hooked her heel around its right knee joint and drove her weight forward. The Tharkill faltered. For one heartbeat, its balance failed. The crowd fell silent. Myra's wrist flared as the restraints overloaded from the sudden shift in force. Sparks hissed, and the green coils blinked out. She flexed her fingers once, twice. Time to work, she thought. The Bonebreaker twisted back toward her with a sound that was almost a laugh. You delay nothing. You only prolong. Guess we'll see, Mira murmured. The announcer's voice cracked slightly as he tried to keep the narrative alive. The human struggle is futile. Witness the predator, unstoppable, merciless. But even as he spoke, the Tharkill hesitated. Its predator's confidence flickered for a fraction of a second as Mira raised her chin, her eyes steady and unafraid. Calm heart, sharp mind, faster hands. Her mother's mantra looped in her head like a war hymn. When the Tharkill charged again, Mira didn't move aside. She stepped in. The crowd gasped. And for the first time all evening, the bureaucrats stopped breathing entirely. The moment stretched impossibly long, like the galaxy itself had paused to watch. The Tharkill's claws sliced through the air where Myra's head should have been, leaving a sharp hiss as they carved the oxygen molecules apart. But Mira wasn't there anymore. She was already moving, body low, pivoting inside the beast guard with all the grace of a hunting cat. The crowd erupted, some cheering, most screeching in outrage. The announcer's voice cracked across the arena, trying to regain control of the narrative. An unexpected dodge. But surely her mammalian reflexes won't save her for long. Mira barely heard it. Her mind was quiet, her breathing steady. 1 second. 2. That was all she needed. The Tharkill wheeled around, its bulk shockingly fast for a creature its size. Spittle and venom sprayed from its mandibles as it roared, the sound reverberating like a collapsing star. Its 4 arms shot forward, claws gleaming. Enough, it bellowed. No more games, meat. But Mira wasn't playing. She had never been playing. Her hand flicked out, a movement so fast the cameras didn't catch it, and something small and metallic clinked against the Tharkill's armored chest. The creature paused, its expression a confused mix of rage and amusement. And then the EMP charge detonated. It wasn't dramatic. No fireball, no blinding light. Just a faint pop and a rippling blue wave that passed harmlessly over Mira, but sent the Tharkill's neural augmentations into screaming chaos. Its combat enhancements shorted out, muscle fibers seizing up in a catastrophic cascade. The Tharkill froze mid-strike, claws trembling inches from Myra's throat. Its crimson eyes widened with realization as its massive frame began to tip forward. What did you— Insurance policy, Mira said softly. She sidestepped as the Titan collapsed to its knees, the sound of its armor plates hitting the floor echoing like a funeral drum. The crowd fell into an eerie, shocked silence. 100 alien mouths hung open, 100 sets of eyes wide. Mira walked forward, calm as ever, and placed one hand on the Tharkill's heaving chest. You weren't fighting me, she murmured. You were fighting her. Somewhere in the Imperial data networks, a cascade of viruses bloomed like spring flowers, infiltrating every secure channel. Screens across the arena flickered and went black before resolving into a single, grainy image. A woman's face, pale hard eyes, dark hair pulled back in a severe braid, the faintest curve of a smile on lips that had never known warmth. Baba Yaga. 1,000 bureaucrats, admirals, and warlords watching the broadcast felt their blood run cold. The name wasn't whispered, wasn't spoken aloud. It simply existed, like the edge of a knife pressed to their collective throats. She's dead, one insectoid counselor croaked. Apparently not, hissed another. In the luxury box, the Zirith Admiral's crystalline skin fractured in a web of tiny cracks. His voice came out tight. End the feed. Now! Too late. The voice of Baba Yaga poured through every speaker in the arena, soft but carrying the weight of inevitability. You executed my daughter on live broadcast. A mistake. Now, you will see what it costs to take what is mine. Mira knelt beside the paralyzed Tharkill and leaned in close enough that only it could hear her next words. She taught me how to survive, but she also taught me how to end wars. The creature's eyes darted, full of helpless terror. You should have killed me before the 6 seconds were up, Mira whispered. Now you're already dead. She stood and turned toward the exit gates. The restraints on her wrists sparked weakly as they fell away, fried beyond recovery. The crowd still hadn't made a sound. The announcer tried to speak, his voice warbling with static before cutting off entirely. Mira didn't look back as the doors parted for her. She walked through the threshold, her boots quiet on the cold metal, her shadow stretching long across the arena floor. Behind her, alarms began to blare, and far above the gas giant, Imperial fleets flickered off the column's grid one by one as Baba Yaga's virus reached their systems. The galaxy, so certain of its order and power, felt a tremor run through its bones. For the first time in centuries, the predators realized they were prey,